Hi there, welcome to Brew. This is where indie developers send their games and I do my best to give feedback on their game design. Today we are talking about Warp Factory, and Warp Factory is a game that was, Warp Factory came from Milo Brandt, developed by Milo Brandt and submitted to us by Milo Brandt. Brandt? This is my background at the moment. It's kind of messed up because I'm trying to figure out how to do something a little bit different, but you'll have to forgive that my lights are a little low. Yeah, so Warp Factory, what is this game? Well, here is some footage of me playing it. What this game looks exactly what it is. This game is exactly what it looks like. You have an input on one side and you have an output on the other. And this is what a lot of people would call a lot of people on Steam would call a Zachtronics-like or a Zach-like or something like that. I've never played a Zachtronics game, so if you're unfamiliar with what Zachtronics is, it's a game like Infinifactory and some of these other games where you basically run a factory of some sort thing. It's like a puzzle-based factory thing. I guess Zachtronics is known for that kind of thing, so people like to call it a Zach-like, I suppose. Warp Factory is basically a factory where you have an input and an output. You're assigned challenges, and those challenges are to make or break certain shapes from one side to the other. And it gets much more advanced than what you're seeing right now. I only got to, but not very far in this game. All right, so this is the menu. This is the opening menu, and it looks a lot like a mobile game to me because all these buttons are pretty big. So I'm not sure why. In fact, I think this game would actually do really well on mobile. I wonder. I don't know if it is, but something to think about. And I think that would be pretty cool. Anyway, so there's not really anything much to say here. I'm not sure what the mods does, but I haven't looked into it. This is where the campaign starts, and I think this decision tree looking thing, this branching thing is a little weird to me just because I don't really understand why it's branching. Maybe because I didn't get so far in the game, so I'm not really sure why. Maybe I shouldn't be able to talk about that just yet. When you get into that, then it comes into here. And this is kind of funny because this is following the same kind of branching thing, but it's not actually branching, so you're just kind of going up and down for no real reason. I'm not sure why. I thought maybe a grid-based thing would be more appropriate here, something, where you have levels, and then say like, this is the teaching levels, and then, you have on another screen your 6 like locked levels, that you can switch in between those screens. And I don't know, to me it felt more traditional, I guess, to do it that way, and to have like a branching system feels kind of weird. So the very first level here is just teaching the player exactly what to do, and it's very obvious in what it has to do. It says, welcome, this is the goal. Move inputs to outputs, and then it shows you like this big flashing arrow to let you know what you're supposed to do. Turn on the factory. It's all very basic. Anyway, so I think these first levels, these tutorial levels are great. Just really, really good design, because what it's doing is teaching every element that the player needs to know. And I have a criticism about it that we'll talk about in a second. At the moment, this first one is really good because it shows that gravity plays a part in this also. So it says, let's fix the factory, and then tells you exactly where to put these conveyor belts. Has the arrows and the flashing green stuff. And then it says, now turn it on and you're good. And this is, by the way, what happens. It says to increase the speed. So I don't know why, but you have to increase the speed when you do stuff like this. I'm not exactly sure what the reason behind it is. But then when you do it, it keeps going. Like when you've completed the level, like right here, it says victory. But I would never know because the victory itself, the title up here, it kind of just looks like everything else, right? Next level, return to map, keep watching. All of this looks like the word victory, and so I immediately when it happens, I'm not like immediately going, oh yeah, I won the level, I beat it. It's more like, oh, what's happening here? Oh, I won, okay. like, because the background is still going, and it feels a little strange to keep going that way. Anyway, so we go on to this next part, and I really like this next one too. Why am I getting texted? What is this? Getting some YouTube comments. Okay, so yeah, so this next one is also very well designed. It says, oops, our bridge fell down. So if you didn't see that right here, so what this is teaching is how to join things together using like a welding kind of thing. And what's really nice about that is I like this level design because it shows this gradient here. You can see that it's getting light to dark down here. And so what that does for the player is it lets them know that, let's rewind here for a second. Okay, so when you play it, then the bridge falls down, but it's very obvious to the player because it's getting much darker, as it falls. So I thought that was a really nice thing to do. That was really cool. It's just a really good way of teaching the player. So anyway, so it says right there, oops, our bridge fell down. And then you can see that the blocks start to fall down too. And so it says, let's fix the factory. And then teaches you, well, you gotta join things together by using this welding thing. Yeah, very simple, very easy, very good. I'm very glad about all this stuff because to get something it gets pretty complex. So to nail these teaching things is very important, very, very important. Because if the player is ever stuck on any of these, they're gonna be screwed later on. And that's kind of what happened to me. So keep going here. This is portals. It says, these are portals. What goes in the blue comes out of the orange. This one just kind of lets you do your own stuff. And it's pretty cool because it's a puzzle that utilizes both, joining stuff and the conveyor belt here. And that's all it uses. So, using your knowledge, you're just kind of tested on it. And so that's great. Really good stuff right there. And so I went ahead and built this contraption. It's kind of nutso to watch. But yeah, that's kind of one of the appeal to these kinds of games. Okay, so this one teaches flipping and rotating, which is also a perfect way to teach it. It says this path is complicated and shows you all the arrows flashing at once, which I thought was pretty cool. Kind of drives home the complication of everything. So it says we need to rotate our pieces and then just guides you exactly what to do. Press F to flip and scroll to rotate, all that kind of stuff, and then join your pieces together. It says right there. Pretty simple. We get a little bit into something that is being taught, I don't think on purpose here. So one of the things that's being taught here is friction. And that friction is this stuff right here. You can see all the conveyor belts are moving these squares on the top, but it's also being taught at the same time of this rotation and flipping, stuff. When it's hidden in that stuff, it starts to feel like I'm not being taught that. So now I feel like there's something that I should have got from here that I should have understood, which is the friction, and I'm not really understanding that. Like I'm not really sure how to do it. Because later on in the levels, I tried to do this thing where I would build where I built like a wall here made of conveyor belts that were going up. And I was hoping that when these squares were right next to it, that they would move up too, but they don't. Because I guess they're fighting against gravity or something, I'm not really sure. And that's the thing that I want to know, right? That's something that I need to be taught. And so unfortunately with this game, because it has so many things that are required for the player to understand, some things can go wrong. And so when you get those tiny things wrong, those fundamentals wrong, it cascades. For example, I believe this next one here. Yeah. So this one is where they start introducing portals. The second time we're introduced to portals. The first time was with the just gravity, where it drops in one way and then comes out the other way. But this one is where they come in one way and then they start to rotate the other way. Now the reason why they're rotating is because, so it's gonna be kind of hard to see, but you can see right here that it's going in this way, right? Like this shape right here is going in that way. And so it's coming out this way. And so as you can see, so if we rotate this whole thing, you can see that's exactly what's happening, right? It is coming out that way. but now it's following gravity also. So that's the logic behind this thing. But man, this was something that was really hard for me to understand, and this was actually the crux of why I didn't play the game as much as I wanted to, because I did not really get the portal stuff. You should know that me going into this, now what I'm explaining is what's going through my mind. Obviously, this isn't the same for everyone who's gonna pick this up. Some people are gonna be able to look at this and just be like, oh, I get it, yeah, that's obvious, right? It was not obvious to me, and I think this is important for to understand why people like me, when they approach this kind of game, why they would be separated from it. So this is what's going through my mind, not necessarily everybody's. I'm not exactly sure what is causing the rotation of the portal. Now, logically, it makes sense, because like I just showed you, with rotating the screen, logically this makes sense. But it's a brand new concept, at least to me. I've never seen anything like this before. So because I need to understand the fundamentals here, there's new fundamentals here that I'm unaware of, and we need to hammer these in, and I'm just not really sure how these are working, and I need to understand. What happens here is that it shows you, okay, portals can rotate objects, but our output isn't quite right. As you can see, it's breaking up. So what this says is, it says try again. What it's going to teach you isn't how to rotate, but instead different. It says, let's fix this factory. So what happens is, it says get the tool, get the portal, place the portal here, and then F to flip. So now what we're doing is we're fixing it with flipping, not necessarily with rotation. And so as you can see, when we continue this, we have now a rotation and a flip. And so now it works, which is great, but I still don't understand the rotation. So this next one is kind of trying to get into that area of teaching the rotation a little bit more. So right here it says, this is how we're gonna rotate, and it says go ahead and press F to flip and to rotate. So we're showing the player two things at once here, which is to invert the portal and rotate it at the same time. And so now when the shape comes out, it comes out and it's perfect. But again, because I just followed the rules, I'm not really understanding the fundamentals here, why exactly it's coming out this way. What I would like to see is a very obvious take on this, to me, a more obvious take, because obviously I'm not getting this. So I need something more. For someone like me, what I would need to see is, I would need to see this, what happens when this comes through when the portal is facing this way, or when it's facing this way, or when it's down, or when it's up. I need to see all of those kinds of things before I even think about flipping the portal also. I need to understand how the fundamentals of the rotations work. And it would be really neat, I think, to have, I don't know how you would do it in this kind of way, but it would be really nice to show, I don't know, maybe there's several different puzzles that you could do. One puzzle to flip one way, one puzzle to flip another way or something. The reason why I'm talking about these things is because I don't feel like it's effectively taught. And you can see there is actually a portion of it being taught. It just doesn't work for me. And what that portion is when you place the portals themselves, you can see that these little trails are going through here. So what we have is we have the shapes going in one way and them coming out this way. Now theoretically, I think this works, right? Theoretically, because you're showing the player exactly how the shape is entering and how it's going to come out, which is cool. If you're only working with this shape, which is the L block here. But later on in the game, you work with a lot of different shapes, and that's kind of the whole point of the game, right? Is to use this knowledge of this kind of portal technology to get all different kinds of shapes. So like this, for example, is one thing that I had to do, where you have this kind of Tetris T-block thing going on, but it's facing upwards, and of course you have to make it face downwards in order to get into this thing so that you can achieve this thing. So what do? You have to rotate the block. But when you position your portals, it keeps showing you just the same L block, right? Like as if that kind of knowledge is just understood, totally. And it's not, because to me, when I look at that L block, when I see this L block right here, I'm thinking, okay, so it comes in that way, it goes out that way. But what does that mean for the T block? I'm not even sure. Like I have to mentally do this exercise in my head, and I'm definitely not good with this kind of stuff, like trying to I can mentally think of something, how to rotate it, but in a game, I feel like I should be able to see that. I wouldn't know how to fix this exactly for me other than putting in the exact shape that I want. The other way that I could think about doing this is experimentation, and that's the way I went along with this, was to just experiment. But man, is that what is the word? I have to keep adding portals until I figure out what I'm doing. And right here I'm just like, okay, now I got it 90 degrees, so now I got to figure out how to do it from 90 degrees. And man, it just, for me, I have to keep redoing it over and over and over so I can figure out exactly what it is that I'm trying to do. It's this exercise in my head of trying to mentally rotate things over and over and over that really pulls me away from the game. Usually when I have a Dev Brew episode to play, even if it's a game that I'm not sure I enjoy playing, I try to play the whole thing for the benefit of the developer, right? So I can be like, hey, this is what I saw throughout this whole thing. Let me give you feedback on all of it, right? That's what I try to do, what I strive to do at least. And I tried to do that here, but it took so much mental effort for me to try to rotate things in my brain that I couldn't continue. It was too hard for me to figure out these puzzles. It took me way too long to figure them out. By the time I was done with a few puzzles, it had already been an hour, and it's like it wasn't fun because I was trying to figure things out. I was trying to figure out the fundamentals. One of the things that was in my mind was I was thinking, why don't I like this genre? But it's not the genre. What it is the information that's coming into your mind. So, for example, one of the games that I like a lot is Car Mechanic Simulator. And Car Mechanic Simulator is a sandbox puzzle game where you're just handed a car and you're told to fix this one thing, right? And that's quite a big task when you don't know what you're doing. But what's neat about that is because the way the game is designed, you can go in completely not really knowing anything about how to repair a car. In fact, I learned a lot of my real car repair skills from playing that game, Car Mechanic Sim. All that's based on is exploration, right? You go into a car and it goes semi-transparent, and then you have these outlines that come in that are green when you can remove an item, red when you can't remove it, and then things look rusty when they're broken. And that's all it is, and it's very easy to figure out things when you're just presented with that kind of design, right? If you could imagine the same kind of thing happen where you look into a semi-transparent car and you just have to figure out where the piece is without any kind of icons to show you exactly what's broken or what's rusted or what's outlined, it would be very difficult. Especially if you're someone who's never touched a car before and you go inside and you're just like, okay, time to do an oil change. And you're like, I don't even know where to start. Why can't I remove this thing, right? So that's what I really like about that game, is that it has this design that kind of just lets anyone interact with it without having prior knowledge of this kind of stuff. Now, the portal mechanic in this game doesn't really require prior knowledge, but I don't feel like it teaches it effectively to understand it completely. If you look at Infinifactory, Infinifactory has these pieces that you rotate and add and everything, but then you have this yellow arrow that's on top that kind of follows wherever you put that piece and then shows you exactly what's going to be happening when you put a piece on. Now, because that doesn't have a portal mechanic, you can't, well, I guess you could actually do that. That would be interesting. What would help me, I think, is something that's along the lines of that same design. So if you were to think about showing the player exactly what's happening when you put stuff into it, so rather than like an L block, being rotated once, which again, in theory is really neat, but I don't think really works practically, is you would just show like an arrow, being rotated clockwise or counterclockwise. Each one would be a quarter turn or 90 degrees, or maybe even show it like this and have it 90 degrees. I don't know. I'm just coming up with random stuff on top of my head. But anyway, something like that would make me understand, oh, okay, putting the portal here makes that piece rotate that much, just like that. And to really visualize that thing is really what we need in order to understand the mechanic at its full use. And that's really what was missing for me. And that was the only thing that was missing, because honestly, this game is pretty cool. It's pretty fun to do, except, man, I had such a hard time playing it because my mind could not get across the whole portal thing, and every single puzzle just about, it's called Warp Factory, it uses this portal mechanic, so it was really hard for me to understand all that stuff. In fact, there were times where I was playing this game where I was just like, man, I just wish I could just rotate them rather than having to stick them through portals and try to think, like fourth dimensionally in order to make it rotate. Again, it's a really cool mechanic and I love it. I just need that taught, Another thing that I felt like needed to be kind of taught more for me was the physics, basically. There was a few times in this game where I tried to create something that just did not work, and I was trying to figure out why it didn't work, and it's because of the physics, but it was something that I had to figure out for myself rather than it being taught. So for example, one of the things that I don't feel like is really taught is the way that gravity is affected when an object goes through a portal. So you can see here when we have a shape go in, it comes in halfway and then drops. And the reason why is because, theoretically again, this piece, because it has a piece down here, would hit the portal and then it would drop because, this is a section that's empty. So, that makes sense. But because this isn't like fully realistic, I'm not thinking that the shape is gonna move until it gets all the way outside of the portal. But instead what we have is like this selective kind of reality going on here. So it's as if you're making your own physics, which I think is, again, cool, and you can do that, but it needs to be explained. So if this was realistic in my mind, when this would come out, it would rotate a little bit before coming out and just kind of fall. Like, it wouldn't come out straight like that and then immediately fall 90 degrees like it's doing right now, where this other piece is still stuck in there. And then, once it gets locked right here, the whole thing would kind of slip and then kind of fall that way. But that's not going to happen because this isn't, a full physics game. It's not completely realistic, so it's selectively realistic. Yeah, I just feel like those things need to be taught a little bit more clear. Because once I have those understandings, locked, then I'll have a whole lot of fun with this game. But until then, it's just kind of a chore to figure out because I don't really understand what's happening. So it's hard. Anyway, so I feel like I've repeated myself quite a lot trying to explain one concept. But that was the main takeaway that I had with this game, was some of the things that are taught I don't feel like are taught completely, but so that is what it is. So I hope that I have helped in some way, at least, showing you how I approach the game and things that I think need to be taught more. I think, again, with this kind of stuff, it just needs playtesting. Playtesting is one of those things that will get all these things out for you. So one of the things you can do is in my Discord, you can pop your game in and be like, hey, I need some playtesting. And I offer, there is a section for playtesting. It really depends on how, the other people are feeling that day, if they want to playtest or not. There's also another Discord that I go to every now and then called Star-Eyed Atlas. I think has a playtesting section, but I'll stick a link in the description so you can try to find out where that is. But yeah, definitely playtesting. I think we'll get to the bottom of a lot of those things. So anyway, I think that is all I have for today. Thank you so much. I know I didn't have my coffee. I have my coffee, but I drank it when I was doing my podcast earlier today, which is not connected to this channel, but if you're interested, it's a podcast called The Talkies from Carmen Line Studios, a place that I used to do stuff, but I still do that podcast every now and then. I'll stick that link in the description too. Why not? Thank you for submitting this game, Milo. It was a lot of fun trying to analyze, exactly what it was that was going inside my head. And I've never played a game like this before. I've never played a factory game like this before. So because of you, I got more into Zachtronic stuff. I think that's what it's called. So yeah, so thank you for that. That's it. I'll see you guys later.